Hello and welcome back once again. Today I want to talk a little bit more about the Cathars, and today zero in on the Albigensian Crusade and a bit more of their history. I will have additional videos coming up that talks more deeply about their beliefs and about how Catharism is still evident in some places today, although in the 13th century, the Cathar faith of that time was pretty much destroyed. If it's your first time here, I want to welcome you. I spent most of my time talking about ancient religions or spiritual movements, sometimes famous people who have made a huge difference in the way our world is today. So check out the playlists. There are lots of different groups that you might never have heard of, and each one is interesting. I don't try to convince you to follow any particular group or their ideas. These videos are for your information and come primarily from a historical point of view. If you have any questions or comments, I hope you'll leave them in the comment section, and I try to answer them as soon as I can. And if you like these kinds of subjects, I invite you to subscribe to the channel. Now, last week I started talking about the Cathars, who were a religious group from the 11th and 12th century. And in the description box, I'll put an address so that you can find that video and check out that as a supplement to what you're going to hear about today. And today I'm talking about what's called the Albigensian Crusade. And I'm going to zero in on 3 cities in the area of southern France, or 3 confrontations, I guess would be a better way to put it, between the Roman Catholic Church and the Cathars. Now, the Crusades years were 1209 to 1229, and this was the first crusade to specifically target Christians. It took place in an area called the Languedoc, which was a region in southern France, and the unofficial capital of the region was Toulouse. Now, the people that you want to know about in this crusade, from the Crusader point of view, are Pope Innocent III, who was the Pope who declared the crusade, King Philip II, who was the King of France up until 1223, so right in the midst of this crusade, he died, and his son, Louis VIII. And basically, they were interested in this crusade as a means to increase control over the lands in the southern part of France, so that they would not be annexed by Spain. Now, this being declared a crusade meant that church funds could be used to fund this battle against the Cathars, And it also meant that those who fought in it would be declared an indulgence. And it ended up that the indulgence was for any soldier who fought for 40 days. Even if at the end of 40 days they turned around and went home, all of their sins, their entire life's sins, were forgiven. They were given a pass into what the church taught was heaven. So let me talk about the three places where horrendous things happened at the hands of the church to the Cathars. Well, the first city I want to mention is Bezier. Bezier had about 10,000 people who lived there. Among them were probably 700 Cathars. When the Crusaders came, they demanded that the people of the city turn the Cathars over to them. And when the people refused, they began to kill the people in the city. And not only the city people were there, but also refugees from other areas had come into the city, frightened by the work of the Crusaders. Now, when this happened, it was mostly women and children that were Cathars. There certainly were men, but a number of women and children were slaughtered. Some people say all 10,000 people were killed. Others say, the Catholic records actually say, that up to 20,000 people were massacred. The entire city was wiped out. And it is in this battle that we get the famous quote where it is asked when these people are being killed, how do we know who to kill? We can't identify who the Cathars are. And the response was, kill them all. God knows his own. The next city approached was the city of Carcassonne. Of course, word of what had happened in Bezier on the 21st of July, 1209, had spread, and people in the area were fleeing their towns and castles. They were terrified. In Carcassonne, they didn't want to massacre all of the people. Again, they asked that the any Cathars there be turned over to them, and that wasn't going to happen. And so the final result in Carcassonne was that the people could leave the city as long as they took nothing with them except the clothes on their back. And so the people fled the city, going to cities and towns in the surrounding areas, and they took nothing with them, so that the Crusaders then had access to the city and anything in there. Well, more atrocities would follow. When the city of Louvois was captured in 1211, the leader, the lord of the city of Louvois and Montreal, was hanged. His sister was thrown into a well. 80 of his knights were executed, and up to 400 Cathars were burned to death. The final city or event that I want to mention didn't happen until the year 1244. It was in March, I believe it was the 16th of March in 1244, that the Cathar stronghold of Montsegur fell. The perfecti had been holed up in a fort castle called Montsegur, and the invading troops had surrounded them. And when they were finally forced to surrender, a palisade had been constructed and filled with the burning wood, and the Cathars were forced into the palisade. About 220 perfecti were burned to death at that place on that day. One thing that came out of this was that the King of France had secured southern France for the French kingdom. And the Roman Catholic Church felt secure in that they had trampled out, exterminated, destroyed a group of people who disagreed with them. As I mentioned before, there are actually people today in 2020 who have studied as best they could the Cathar faith and have embraced the essence of that spiritual movement. Some of them rely on a long memory of past lives for information. And there is a book that I can mention to you. It's called The Cathars and Reincarnation, and it's rather difficult to get a hold of, but I'll put the information about it in the description box. And this is a study by a psychiatrist of a woman who has dreams and flashes of having been reincarnated as a Cathar, and shares her information in that book, and others through spiritual guidance and revelation of a number of different types are gathering together what they believe were the essence of the Cathar people. And that is a spiritual movement today. Just as I've mentioned before, that there are Gnostics in our world today of the Gnostic faith. And if you check out the playlists, we've got a number of videos here about the Gnostics. So I hope you found today's video informative. It is a sad story of how one section of the dominant and more powerful part of a religious group can turn on and attempt to destroy other people of faith. I hope you can be here again next time. We're going to look a bit more closely at some of the things that the Cathars believed in a bit of detail. What we learned from, as I mentioned last time, from the Inquisition, and the confessions of the Cathars recorded by the Roman Catholic Church, and also from the few pieces of writing that we do have, and from the long memory and revelations of modern people. So I'll see you soon. Have a great week.